नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते जयपताका स्वामीति नामिने नमः आचार्य पादाय निताय कृपाप्रदायिने गौरकथा दामोदर नगर ग्रामतारिणे नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिदान्त स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे. Today we will be reading from Nectar of Devotion book, The Complete Science of Bhakti Yoga by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This Nectar of Devotion book is dedicated to the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipunau Sadharma Samstapakau Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajana Nandena Mattaliko Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghu Yugo Sri Jiva Gopalako. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Sanatana Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Dasa Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami and Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures, the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the world, all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Contents of this Nectar of Devotion book. In this there is a preface, there is an introduction. Part 1, Characteristics of Pure Devotional Service, First Stages of Devotion, Eligibility of the Candidate for Accepting Devotional Service. Devotional Service surpasses all liberation. The Purity of Devotional Service, How to Discharge Devotional Service, Evidence regarding Devotional Principles, Offenses to be avoided, Further consideration of Devotional Principles, Techniques of hearing and remembering, Aspects of transcendental service, Further aspects of transcendental service, 5 potent forms of devotional service, Devotional qualifications, Spontaneous devotional service, Spontaneous devotion further described, Ecstatic love, Character of one in ecstatic love, Devotional service in pure love of God. Part number 2, Transcendental mellow, Qualities of Sri Krishna, Qualities of Krishna further explained, Krishna's personality, Further traits of Sri Krishna, Devotees of Krishna, Stimulation for ecstatic love, Symptoms of ecstatic love, Existential ecstatic love, Expressions of love for Krishna, Further features of ecstatic love for Krishna, Additional symptoms, Symptoms of continuous ecstasy, Indirect expressions of ecstatic love, the Nectar of Devotion, Part number 3, Neutral love of God, Transcendental affection, Servitude, Impetuses for Krishna's service, Indifference and separation, Ways of meeting Krishna, Reverential devotion of sons and other subordinates, Fraternal devotion, Fraternal loving affairs, Parenthood, Devotional service in conjugal love. Part number 4, Laughing ecstasy, Astonishment and chivalry, Compassion and anger, Dread and ghastliness, Mixing of rasas, Further analysis of mixed rasas, Perverted expressions of mellows, Concluding words. Complete list of the contents of this Nectar of Devotion. So first, today we will be reading the preface by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. He was the chief of the 6 Goswamis. When he first met Lord Chaitanya, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada was engaged as a minister in the Mohammedan government of Bengal. He and his brother Sanatana were then named Davira Kasa and Sakara Mallika respectively, and they held responsible posts as ministers of Nawab Hussain Shah. At that time, 500 years ago, the Hindu society was very rigid, and if a member of the Brahmana caste accepted the service of Mohammedan ruler, he was at once rejected from the Brahmana society. That was the position of the two brothers Dabira Kasa, Sakara Mallika. They belonged to the highly situated Saraswata Brahmana community, but they were ostracized due to their acceptance of ministerial post in the government of Hussein Shah. It is the great grace of Lord Chaitanya that he accepted these two exalted personalities as his disciples and raised them to the position of Goswamis, the highest position of Brahminical culture. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya accepted Haridas Thakur as his disciple, although Haridasa happened to be born of a Mohammedan family, and Lord Chaitanya later on made him the Acharya of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya's principles is universal. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna and is engaged in the service of the Lord is accepted as being in a higher position than a person born in the family of a Brahmana. That is the original principle accepted by all Vedic literatures, especially by Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The principle of Lord Chaitanya's movement is in educating and elevating everyone to the exalted post of a Goswami is taught in the Nectar of Devotion. Lord Chaitanya met the two brothers Dabira Kasa and Sakara Mallika in a village known as Ramakeli, the district of Malda. And after that meeting, the brothers decided to retire from government service and join Lord Chaitanya. Dabira Kasa, who was later to become Rupa Goswami, retired from his post and collected all the money he had accumulated. During his service, it is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that his accumulated savings in gold coins equated millions of dollars and filled a large boat. He divided the money in a very exemplary manner, which should be followed by devotees in particular and by humanity in general. 50% of his accumulated wealth was distributed to the Krishna conscious persons, namely the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. 25% was distributed to the relatives, and 25% was kept against emergency expenditures and personal difficulties. Later on, when Sakara Mallika also proposed to retire, the Nawab was very much agitated and put him into jail. But Sakara Mallika, who was later to become Sanashila Sanatana Goswami, took advantage of his brother's personal money, which had been deposited with a village banker, and escaped from the prison of Hussein Shah. In this way, both brothers joined Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rupa Goswami first met Lord Chaitanya at Prayaga, Allahabad, India, and on the Dasaswameta Gata, bathing Gata of that holy city, the Lord instructed him continually for 10 days. The Lord particularly instructed Rupa Goswami on the science of Krishna consciousness. These teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada are narrated in our books, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Later, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada elaborated the teachings of the Lord with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references from various Vedic literatures. Srila Srinivasa Acharya describes in his prayers to the 6 Goswamis that they were all highly learned scholars, not only in Sanskrit but also in foreign languages such as Persian and Arabic. They very scrutinizingly studied all the Vedic scriptures in order to establish the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the authorized principles of the Vedic knowledge. The present Krishna consciousness movement is also based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. We are therefore generally known as Rupanugas, or followers in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. It is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared his book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is now presented in the form of Nectar of Devotion. Persons engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement may take advantage of this great literature and be very. Bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. A philanthropist works in the same way for love of the greater family, and a nationalist for the cause of his country and countrymen. That force which drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist is called rasa, or a kind of mellow relationship, whose taste is very sweet. Bhakti rasa is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa, enjoyed by mundane workers. Mundane workers labor very hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa, which is understood as sense gratification. The relish or taste of the mundane rasa does not long endure, and therefore mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. A businessman is not satisfied by working the whole week. Therefore, wanting a change for the weekend, he goes to a place where he tries to forget his business activities. Then, after the weekend is spent in forgetfulness, he again changes his position and resumes his actual business activities. Material engagement means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. This position of changing back and forth is technically known as Bhoga Tyaga, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. A living entity cannot steadily remain either in sense enjoyment or in renunciation. Change is going on perpetually, and we cannot be happy in either state. Because of our eternal constitutional position, sense gratification does not endure for long, and it is therefore called Chapala Sukha or flickering happiness. For example, an ordinary family man who works very hard day and night and is successful in giving comforts to the members of his family, thereby relishes a kind of mellow. But his whole advancement of material happiness immediately terminates along with his body as soon as his life is over. Death is therefore taken as a representative of God for the atheistic class of men. The devotee realizes the presence of God by devotional service, whereas the atheist realizes the presence of God in the shape of death. At death, everything is finished, and one has to begin a new chapter of life in a new situation, perhaps higher or lower than the last one. In any field of activity, political, social, national, or international, the result of our actions will be finished with the end of life, that is sure. Bhakti Rasa, however, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called Amrita, that which does not die but exists eternally. This is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Bhagavad Gita says that little advancement in Bhakti Rasa can save the devotee from the greatest danger, that of missing the opportunity for human life. The rasas derived from our feelings in social life, in family life, or in the greater family life of altruism, philanthropy, nationalism, socialism, communism, etc., do not guarantee that one's next life will be as a human being. We prepare our next life by our actual activities in the present life. A living entity is offered a particular type of body as a result of his action in the present body. These activities are taken into account by a superior authority known as Daiva, or the authority of God. This Daiva is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the prime cause of everything, and in the Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that a man takes his next body by Daiva Netrena, which means by the supervision of the authority of the Supreme. In an ordinary sense, Daiva is explained as destiny. Daiva supervision gives us a body selected from 84 lakhs forms. The choice does not depend on our selection, but is awarded to us according to our destiny. If our body at present is engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is guaranteed that we will have at least a human body in our next life. A human being is engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society, so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, all bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are Amrita or permanent. This is the subject matter of the Nectar of Devotion. This eternal engagement in Bhakti Rasa can be understood by a serious student upon studying the Nectar of Devotion. Adoption of Bhakti Rasa or Krishna consciousness will immediately bring one to an auspicious life, free from anxieties, and will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. Bhakti Rasa itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation, because it attracts the attention of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Generally, neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God, but God cannot be seen or known by our present materially blunt senses. The process of devotional service, as it is recommended in the Nectar of Devotion, will gradually elevate one from the material condition of life to the spiritual status, wherein the devotee becomes purified of all designations. The senses can then become uncontaminated, being constantly in touch with the Bhakti Rasa. When the purified senses are employed in the service of the Lord, one becomes situated in Bhakti Rasa life, and any action performed for the satisfaction of Krishna in this transcendental Bhakti Rasa stage of life can be relished perpetually. When one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasas or mellows turn into eternity. In the beginning, one is trained according to the principles of regulation under the guidance of the Acharya or spiritual master. And gradually, when one is elevated, devotional service becomes automatic and spontaneous eagerness to serve Krishna. There are 12 kinds of rasas as will be explained in this book, and by renovating our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, we can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. The basic principle of the living end condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. No one can live without loving someone else. This propensity is present in every living being. Even an animal like a tiger has this loving propensity, at least in the dormant stage, and it is certainly present in the human beings. The missing point, however, is where to repose our love so that everyone can become happy. At the present moment, the human society teaches one to love his country or family or his personal self. But there is no information where to repose the loving propensity so that everyone can become happy. That missing point is Krishna. And the Nectar of Devotion teaches us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life. In the primary stage, a child loves his parents and then his brothers and sisters, and as he daily grows up, he begins to love his family, society, community, country, nation, or even the whole human society. But the loving propensity is not satisfied even by loving all human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of Nectar of Devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. Our loving propensity expands just as a vibration of light or air expands, but we do not know where it ends. The Nectar of Devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. We have failed to create peace and harmony in human society even by such great attempts as the United Nations because we do not know the right method. The method is very simple, but one has to understand it with a cool head. The Nectar of Devotion teaches all men how to perform the simple and natural method of loving Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we learn how to love Krishna, then it is very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. It is like pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying food to one's stomach. The method of pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying foodstuffs to the stomach is universally scientific and practical, as every one of us has experienced. Everyone knows well that when we eat something, or in other words, when we put foodstuffs in the stomach, the energy created by such action is immediately distributed throughout the whole body. Similarly, when we pour water on the root, the energy thus created is immediately distributed throughout the entirety of even the largest tree. It is not possible to water the tree part by part, nor is it possible to feed the different parts of the body separately. The Nectar of Devotion will teach us how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything, everywhere. One who does not know this method is missing the point of life. As far as material necessities are concerned, the human civilization at the present moment is very much advanced in living comfortably. But still we are not happy because we are missing the point. The material comforts of life alone are not sufficient to make us happy. The vivid examples in America is America, the richest nation of the world, having all facilities for material comfort, is producing class of men completely confused and frustrated in life. I am appealing herewith to such confused men to learn the art of devotional service as directed in the Nectar of Devotion. And I am sure that the fire of material existence burning within their hearts will be immediately extinguished. The root cause of our dissatisfaction is that our dormant loving propensity has not been fulfilled despite our great advancement in the materialistic way of life. The Nectar of Devotion will give us practical hints how we can live in this material world, perfectly engaged in devotional service, and thus fulfill all our desires in this life and the next. The Nectar of Devotion is not presented to condemn any way of materialistic life, but the attempt is to give information to religionists, philosophers, and people in general how to love Krishna. One may live without material discomfiture, but at the same time, he should learn the art of loving Krishna. At the present moment, we are inventing so many ways to utilize our propensity to love, but factually, we are missing the real point, Krishna. We are watering all parts of the tree, but missing the tree's root. We are trying to keep our body fit by all means, but we are neglecting to supply foodstuffs to the stomach. Missing Krishna means missing oneself also. Real self-realization and realization of Krishna go together simultaneously. For example, seeing oneself in the morning means seeing the sun rays also. Without seeing the sunshine, no one can see himself. Similarly, unless one has realized Krishna, there is no question of self-realization. The Nectar of Devotion is specifically presented for persons who are now engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. I beg to offer my sincere thanks to all my friends and disciples who are helping me to push forward the Krishna consciousness movement in the Western countries. And I beg to acknowledge with thanks the contribution made by my beloved disciple Sriman Jayananda Brahmachari. My thanks are due to the directors of ISKCON Press who have taken so much care in publishing this great literature. Hare Krishna, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, April 13, 1970, ISKCON Headquarters, 3764 Wattseka Avenue, Los Angeles, California. Nectar of Devotion, Introduction. Invoking auspiciousness, Lord Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the reservoir of all rasas or relationships, which are called neutrality, passive adoration, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, conjugal love, comedy, compassion, fear, chivalry, ghastliness, wonder, and devastation. He is the supreme attractive form, and by his universal and transcendental attractive features, he has captivated all the gopis, headed by Taraka, Palika, Shyama, Lalita, and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Let his Lordship's grace be on us so that there may not be any hindrance in the execution of his duty of writing the Nectar of Devotion. Impelled by his divine grace, Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada and of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, by whose inspiration I have been engaged in the matter of compiling this summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is the sublime science of devotional service as propounded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years ago in West Bengal, India, to propagate the movement of Krishna consciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami begins his great book by offering his respectful obeisances unto Srila Sanatana Goswami, who is his elder brother and spiritual master, and he prays that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu may be very pleasing to him. He further prays that by residing in that ocean of nectar, Sri Sanatana Goswami may always feel transcendental pleasure in the service of Radha and Krishna. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas, holy teachers, who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar and who do not care for the various rivers of liberation. Impersonalists are very fond of merging into the Supreme. like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The ocean can be compared to liberation and the rivers to all the different paths of liberation. The impersonalists are dwelling in the river water which eventually comes to the mix with the ocean. They have no information, however, that within the ocean as within the river there are innumerable aquatic living entities. The sharks who dwell in the ocean do not care for the rivers which are gliding down into it. The devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service and they do not care for the rivers. In other words, those who are pure devotees always remain in the ocean of transcendental loving service to the Lord and have no business with the other processes which are compared to the rivers that only gradually come to the ocean. Srila Rupa Goswami praised to his spiritual master Srila Sanatana Goswami for the protection of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the pure nectar of devotional service, from the argumentative logicians who unnecessarily meddle in the science of service to the Lord. He compares their arguments and logic to volcanic eruptions in the midst of the ocean. In the midst of the ocean, volcanic eruptions can do very little harm, and similarly those who are against devotional service to the Lord and who put forward many philosophical theses about the ultimate transcendental realization cannot disturb this great ocean of devotional service. The author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, very humbly submits that he is just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, although he humbly thinks himself unfit for this work. That should be the attitude of all preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement. Following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami, we should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we are simply instrumental to the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is divided into 4 parts, just as the ocean is sometimes divided into 4 parts, and there are different sections within each of these 4 divisions. Originally in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean is divided like the watery ocean into east, south, west and north, while the subsections within these different divisions are called waves. As in the ocean, there are always different waves either on this eastern side, the southern side, the western side or the northern side. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu similarly has different waves. In the first part there are 4 waves, the first being general description of devotional service, the second concerns the regulative principles for executing devotional service, and third way devotional service in ecstasy, and the fourth is the ultimate goal, love of God. These will be explicitly described along with their different symptoms. The authorized descriptions of bhakti or devotional service following in the footsteps of previous acharyas can be summarized in the following statement by Srila Rupa Goswami. First class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably. The purport is that one may also be in Krishna consciousness unfavorably, but that cannot be counted as pure devotional service. Pure devotional service should be free from the desire for any material benefit or for sense gratification. As these desires are cultivated through fruitive activities and philosophical speculation, generally people are engaged in different activities to get some material profit, while most philosophers are engaged in proposing transcendental realization through volumes of world jugglery and speculation. Pure devotional service must always be free from such fruitive activities and philosophical speculations. One has to learn Krishna consciousness or pure devotional service from the authorities by spontaneous loving service. This devotional service is a sort of cultivation. It is not simply inaction for people who like to be inactive or devote their time to silent meditation. There are many different methods for people who want this, but cultivation of Krishna consciousness is different. The particular word used by Srila Rupa Goswami in this connection is anushilana, or cultivation by following the predecessor acharyas, teachers. As soon as we say cultivation, we must refer to activity. Without activity, consciousness alone cannot help us. All activities may be divided into 2 classes. One class may be for achieving a certain goal, and the other may be for avoiding some unfavorable circumstance. In Sanskrit, these activities are called pravritti and nivritti, positive and negative action. There are many examples of negative action. For instance, a diseased person has to be cautious and take medicine in order to avoid some unfavorable illness. Those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in activity. Such activity can be performed with the body or with the mind. Thinking, feeling and willing are all activities of the mind, and when we will to do something, the activity comes to be manifest by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and the personal spiritual master. There are activities of the body, activities of the mind, and activities of speech. A Krishna conscious person engages his words in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is called kirtana. And by his mind, a Krishna conscious person always thinks of the activities of the Lord, as he is speaking on the battlefield of Kurukshetra or engaging in his various pastimes in Vrindavana with his devotees. In this way, one can always think of the devote activities and pastimes of the Lord. This is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. Similarly, we can offer many services with our bodily activities, but all such activities must be in relationship with Krishna. This relationship is established by connecting oneself with the bona fide spiritual master, who is the direct representative of Krishna in disciplic succession. Therefore, the execution of Krishna conscious activities with the body should be directed by the spiritual master and then performed with faith. The connection with the spiritual master is called initiation. From the date of initiation by the spiritual master, the connection between Krishna and the person cultivating Krishna consciousness is established. Without initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, the actual connection with Krishna consciousness is never performed. This cultivation of Krishna consciousness is not material. The Lord has three general energies, namely the external energy, the internal energy, and the marginal energy. The living entities are called marginal energy, and the material cosmic manifestation is the action of the external or material energy. Then there is a spiritual world, which is a manifestation of the internal energy. The living entities, who are called marginal energy, perform material activities when acting under the direct inferior external energy, and when they engage in activities under the internal spiritual energy, their activities are called Krishna conscious. This means that those who are great souls, who are great devotees, do not act under the spell of material energy, but act instead under the protection of the spiritual energy. Any activities done in devotional service or in Krishna consciousness are directly under the control of spiritual energy. In other words, energy is a sort of strength, and this strength can be spiritualized by the mercy of both the spiritual, bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami, Lord Chaitanya states that it is a fortunate person who comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. One who is serious about spiritual life is given by Krishna the intelligence to come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, and then by the grace of the spiritual master, one becomes advanced in consciousness, Krishna consciousness. In this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy, Krishna and the spiritual master. This has nothing to do with the material world. When we speak of Krishna, we refer to the Supreme Personality Godhead along with his many expansions. He is expanded by his plenary parts and parcels, his differentiated parts and parcels, and his different energies. Krishna, in other words, means everything and includes everything. Generally, however, we should understand Krishna to mean Krishna and his personal expansions. Krishna expands himself as Baladeva, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Aniruddha and Pradyumna, Narama, Narasimha, Varaha, as well as many other incarnations and innumerable Vishnu expansions. These are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam to be as numerous as in uncountable waves. So Krishna includes all such expansions as well as his pure devotees. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Krishna's expansions are all complete in eternity, blissfulness and cognizance. Devotional service means to prosecute Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, and any activities which are not favorable to the transcendental favor of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. For example, great demons like Ravana, Kamsa and Hiranyakashipu were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy. This sort of thinking cannot be accepted as bhakti or Krishna consciousness. The impersonalists sometimes misunderstand devotional service in such a way that they divide Krishna from his paraphernalia and pastimes. For example, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the impersonalists say that although Krishna is of interest, the battlefield of Kurukshetra isn't. The devotees, however, also know that the battlefield of Kurukshetra by itself has nothing to do with their business, but in addition, they know that Krishna does not mean just Krishna alone. He is always with his associates and paraphernalia. For instance, if someone says, give something to eat to the man with the weapons, the eating process is done by the man and not by the weapons. Similarly, in Krishna consciousness, the devotee may be interested in the paraphernalia and locations such as the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which are associated with Krishna, but he is not concerned with simply any battlefield. He is concerned with Krishna, his speech, his instructions, etc. It is because Krishna is there that the battlefield is so important. This is the summary understanding of what Krishna consciousness is. Without this understanding, one is sure to misunderstand why the devotees are interested in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. One who is interested in Krishna consciousness becomes interested in his different pastimes and activities. The definition of a pure devotee as given by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu can be summarized thus: his service is favorable and is always in relation to Krishna. In order to keep the purity of such Krishna conscious activities, one must be freed from all material desires and philosophical speculation. Any desire except for the service of the Lord is called material desire, and philosophical speculation refers to the sort of speculation which ultimately arrives at a conclusion of voidism or impersonalism. This conclusion is useless for a Krishna conscious person. Only rarely by philosophical speculation can one reach the conclusion of worshipping Vasudeva Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita itself. The ultimate end of philosophical speculation then must be Krishna, with the understanding that Krishna is everything, the cause of all causes, and that one should therefore surrender unto him. If this ultimate goal is reached, then philosophical advancement is favorable. But if the conclusions of philosophical speculation is voidism or impersonalism, that is not bhakti. Karma or fruitive activities are sometimes understood to be ritualistic activities. There are many persons who are very much attracted by the ritualistic activities described in the Vedas. But if one becomes attracted simply to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, his activities are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. Actually, Krishna consciousness can be based simply on hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. described in the Srimad Bhagavatam or 9 different processes, besides which everything done is unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. Thus, one should always be guarding against fall downs. Srila Rupa Goswami has also mentioned in this definition of bhakti the word jnana karmadi. This karmadi fruitive work consists of activities which are unable to help one attain to pure devotional service. Many forms of so-called renunciation are also not favorable to Krishna conscious devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami has also quoted a definition from the Narada Pancharatra as follows: one should be free from all material designations and by Krishna consciousness must be cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. So when our senses are engaged for the actual proprietor of the senses, that is called devotional service. In our conditional state, our senses are engaged in serving these bodily demands, and the same senses are engaged in executing the order of Krishna. Our activities are called bhakti. As long as one identifies himself as belonging to a certain family, a certain society, or a certain person, is said to be covered with designations. When one is fully aware that he does not belong to any family, society, or country, but is eternally related to Krishna, he then realizes that his energy should be employed not in the interest of so-called family, society, or country, but in the interest of Krishna. This is purity of purpose, and the platform of pure devotional service is in Krishna consciousness.